Hi, this is Kasian, and it's time for a weekly conference call at VectorspaceAI. First, we'll start with what's happening around the world. U.S. hospitals and ambulances struggle to keep up with COVID-19 cases, and this is happening not just in the United States, but pockets globally. The United States Capitol was attacked. A second impeachment for the president is in process, and this is for inciting an insurrection or a violent uprising against the government, occurring at the United States Capitol, with one police officer killed by pro-Trump rioters and 4 others dead, along with death threats to the vice president and other members of Congress. The U.S. government has classified this as domestic terrorism, and the head of Homeland Security has resigned. Bloomberg reports the U.S. Army Secretary says at least 25 domestic terrorism cases have been opened, and Reuters is reporting the U.S. Capitol siege is a wake-up call for democracies, says top EU diplomat. 6,200 National Guard have been deployed at the Capitol, and the FBI warns of armed protests at all 50 state capitals, leading up to the inauguration of President-elect Biden on January 20th. Meanwhile, companies like Amazon, Google, Apple, Twitter, and Stripe, including many others, have banned right-wing media outlets and conspiracy theorists, and they've also banned the president. In our strategy section, we're going to talk about how this connects to VectorspaceAI and language models. We're also going to talk about how it connects to the DAO. On the industry side, we're paying attention to a handful of things, and just a handful of things. And that includes the DAO. The DAO's at 31K. That is part of our industry. We service the traditional markets, and we also service the crypto markets, the financial markets as a whole. BTC traded up to 42,000, and ETH up to 1,300, around 1,300. Bakkt is IPOing. And Bakkt is a company in association with ICE and NYSE, and prepared to list all kinds of digital assets. They were putting together a crypto ETF or a BTC ETF a while ago, and tried to get through several regulatory approvals, and they've been going through those hurdles ever since. So now they've decided to IPO via a SPAC. I think it's a great idea. I think it gives them great exposure. And I think it's great for the entire industry. On the GPT-3 side, this is a language model. And its ability to generate synthetic content is going to be a topic for discussion in the coming weeks and months here as it relates to AI security and national security. On the themes and events side, Plug Power received about $1.5 billion from a group that was interested in advancing hydrogen fuel cell technology. So that meant that hydrogen fuel cell, the theme, hydrogen fuel cells, and the associated equities and components rose. Anything associated to Plug Power, almost anything, rose. So that was a thematic basket that we were observing this week. And Eli Lilly released a drug related to Alzheimer's. This drug is very effective and could be a theme on its own based on other companies working on similar drugs. And then, of course, we've got the global event related to the U.S. Capitol attack. And it would be pretty obvious to most in the market that spend a lot of time moving money around in the markets that you should be shorting any companies directly involved with the U.S. Capitol attacks. On the corporate side, we are focused on adapting to market conditions, and that includes an ongoing SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. On the engineering and product and ops side, we are working closely with CloudQuant to roll out a dataset which includes for the rows pharmas and for the columns pharmas and drug compounds. So 500 pharmaceutical companies for the rows, 500 pharmaceutical companies plus 100 drug compounds for the columns. And this would enable you to, for example, with the Eli Lilly drug, be able to create a cluster of companies, publicly traded pharma companies that might be impacted by that drug application. So we're going to be rolling out one data set at a time, and this was a request by CloudQuant to make sure that they can maximize the showcasing surrounding any data set. And of course, the revenue. And we'll be working with CloudQuant on the webinar side. We'll keep everyone updated there. On the new data side, we're working with them on a presentation and talking with more funds. And we'll be updating the public on that next week. On the S&P side, S&P Global, we're meeting with them tomorrow, and we're continuing with our API integration. And we're going to be concurrently working with them on getting our data sets rolled out. We just need to put together the description, the same one that's going to be given to CloudQuant and new data, which includes the chart flow visualization and a link to the dataset toolkit. And we're also putting together a demo, and that is almost done. This is a cookie cut demo that relates to what can be done with the coronavirus thematic basket. What was done. And we had a good discussion with Schoenfeld, that's an $18 billion hedge fund last week. They're interested in trialing our data sets, so we'll go ahead and keep everyone updated there. And we don't have any updates related to CERN, but that is ongoing. On the sales and marketing side, we are throttled. On the exchanges side, that's ongoing. On the IR, PR, and Marcom side, it's very important for us to pay attention to global headlines so that we can navigate news cycles. It's very important when there are noisy news cycles not to release any PRs. You don't want to be talking to the public while you've got all kinds of disasters happening around the world. You want things to clear up. You want the news cycles to clear up a little bit. For example, if the Dow spikes down by 3%, we're not going to be issuing any news. If BTC spike down by 5% or 3% or 20%, we're going to wait until things calm down before issuing news. So we will be working around those news cycles strategically. And of course, CloudQuant and its case studies and webinars, we've got that lined up, including more PR related to that initial data set we're rolling out. And then on the new data side, we've got the case study, and I didn't mention they are interested in doing a case study related to equities that are involved with the vaccine distribution. We don't know if we're going to have time to do that, realistically, but we're going to see if we can make time, because that would be pretty strategic for us to do from a PR perspective. And then, of course, S&P Global, that's its own PR pipeline. And we're on track for that. We're also going to be issuing a PR ourselves related to customers that have signed up and customers that are holding VXV, which includes any customer on the trial tier. That would mean any hedge fund, asset management company, any family office, any prop desk, any group out there that trials our data sets, they're required to hold VXV. So we'll be announcing, in the spirit of full disclosure, who these holders of VXV are, who these customers are. And of course, if we have to adhere to any confidentiality agreements they have that prevent us from disclosing who they are as a customer, then we'll go ahead and do that. But so far, we don't have anyone that's requested that. And we have questions from the trader base. Next. Our first question is, hello, it's nice that you are talking to a few funds becoming VectorspaceAI customers. Will more than one of those be involved in the capital raise? It's likely that we'll have more than one sit at the table talking to others related to the capital raise. Question 2, with what amount of engineering bandwidth is currently available for these sorts of requests? If BlackRock onboarded tomorrow, is the manpower available to build their custom data sets, or would we be hiring, or would hiring be required? I know you said, this is a series of questions in one big block here. I know you said engineering resources are never deep enough and you plan to devote a fair amount of upcoming raise towards beefing up the engineering team. I'm just curious how constrained things are currently, if you're willing to share. Every technology company is constrained on engineering resources. So yes, we are, some of our progress is gated by available engineering resources. That's just the nature of the beast. How fast can we scale? We're designed to scale. We've scaled before. We know what that entails. And scaling just isn't a matter of adding people. Question 3, you said that you will close a private sale which will properly value a company. Does it mean that VXV will be traded at price according to that OTC private sale? Oh, we don't know yet, but it will be close. Question 4, during an IPO event, the stock of VectorspaceAI will list separately from the token. Is that correct? Which one do you expect to list first on NASDAQ? Okay, so this is uncharted territory for everybody. This means that when we move ahead, nobody knows how things will be structured sometimes. Absolutely nobody. So this means that we're going to engage with a brick-by-brick process, and that includes taking one step, finding out what we have to do next. And specifically, that does not mean that the token will list separately. We don't know yet. We may wrap it all into one. We may have 2. We may have 3. We may have a tracking stock. We do not know yet. We will figure this out as things shape up and as regulation shapes up and as things move along. In whatever case, it's going to be positive. We're not doing this for, not to make money. Question 5, why VXV is effectively not mentioned on the website? We don't need to mention VXV on the website. We're not promoting VXV, we're promoting the datasets. It's very important to understand that the value of the datasets comes first. Then comes the value of VXV. Question 6. Are you able to add color around the liquidity strategy when enterprise use really picks up? Currently, the listing exchanges have really thin books. Seems like this could quickly become an issue. Where is the enterprise custodial service getting their tokens? That's one big question block. First off, liquidity happens when you have people willing to sell, and so far nobody's willing to sell. That means that the data sets are valued according to the price of VXV. And that's going to flip. What that means is that our customers are going to be valuing, our institutional customers are going to be valuing VXV based on taking 50% of the revenue and taking positions in VXV so that they can have access to tiered levels of service related to their data sets and have access to their data sets to begin with. So liquidity happens when there are enough buyers and sellers at a particular price point. And so far, that we haven't reached that price point. When we have reached that price point, you'll know. When you see blocks sitting on the bid side, big blocks in size, that would mean for us at this price range, it would be about 100, 200K, 500K. When you start seeing those, you'll start seeing liquidity. And you'll want to see liquidity not at low price levels, but at high price levels. So that's the goal here, is to make sure that these data sets are valued the way they should be. And that value is translated to VXV. Question 7, I'm a long-term holder and a big believer. I want to have VXV tokens and equity too. I know we're in a pre-IPO stage, but I would like to know how I can acquire equity at the moment. I'm not sure if I should wait for the IPO or buy more tokens. Can you please provide some clarification? Well, first off, yes, we are in a pre-IPO stage, but we are very early. We are not in the process of IPOing today. We're going to wait to determine what market conditions are going to be like. We're also going to wait for a little bit of legal advice that we have coming up the pike, including some advice related to regulation that's upcoming. We want to make sure that the company is groomed to be listed on a U.S. exchange. And what that means is being able to set the right expectations in terms of what we can accomplish as a company and how we're valued as a company. So right now, we're being valued essentially in a second market, and we're okay with that. Facebook was valued in a second market from $0 to $2 to $1.50, back down to $1.25 or something like that, back up to $5, and then up to $44, and then they IPO'd. Next, we'll move on to our strategy section. All eyes are on the Dow. We were going to talk a little bit about systematic risk in the traditional markets, the domino effect. When the tide turns, when you're over leveraged and you've never experienced a downturn, and the market suddenly turns, and you don't know what to do. So you start exiting your positions. You're already over leveraged. Maybe you get closed out by some margin calls. And maybe you dollar cost average all the way down, not all the way down, somewhat down, and you lose even more. And then you've got waves and waves of sellers nonstop, and the market begins to crash. We may not experience that for a while. We'll see. We are looking for that kind of catalyst, though. And in that, we are keeping a very close eye on the Dow. That's one thing that you do when you want to determine how things might look a few weeks or a few months out. The Dow is a little bit of a predictor. And there's a book called Message of the Markets, which we'd encourage everyone to take a look at, explaining how the Dow can predict certain global events or the outcome of certain global events. One of the first places you'll notice something significantly going wrong with the world is in the Dow. That's if you watch it very closely. The attack on the U.S. Capitol was predicted in two different ways. Number one, by the Dow. Its reaction showed that it was priced in, it was expected. The Dow closed up by 437 points that day, on that Wednesday that the Capitol was attacked. That's the first reason we can tell that the U.S. Capitol attack was predicted. The second reason was based on chatter. Our network includes certain InfoSec, cybersecurity, and INET security groups that have been around for decades. And the war between the DOJ and hackers is no secret. A large part of what the U.S. is experiencing relates to a large-scale joint trolling operation targeting to the DOJ based on astroturfing and software-driven influence campaigning. More on that can be found in a book called The Hacker Crackdown, and in a documentary called Freedom Downtime, and in another one called The Internet's Own Boy, and Zero Day. There's also an interesting article published by Bloomberg titled How to Steal an Election. The desired result in all of this is chaos and anarchy, which has slightly been achieved. So how does all of this connect to VectorSpaceAI? Well, it connects in two ways. Getting machines to process information similar to the way a human might do so, to mimic the process of human cognition, is what we specialize in. Software can imitate a human. It can result in influencing groups of humans that are influenced by natural language generation, natural language understanding, natural language processing. GPT-3, Google's BERT, they use word vectors, and the ability to produce natural-sounding text, human-sounding language, Language that sounds like it's coming from another human or from millions of humans. This is a form of influence campaigning, and it's a large part of what's happening today, what the world is experiencing today. So, the world events connect to VectorSpaceAI in that way, number one. And number two, generating natural language or generating synthetic humans relates to what used to happen on, and still happens today, on financial discussion boards, forums, blogs, and comment sections, relating to influencing groups of people to buy certain stocks. We know of 2 hedge funds that have gotten involved with that in the past, using software to masquerade as humans, or using synthetic humans, and using synthetic social media profiles to influence large groups of people to buy certain stocks or entire sectors. This has been done for quite some time. It's been done on bulletin board services, BBSs, to Usenet, to IRC. It's been done on early internet forums and early social networks, from the Globe to GeoCities to Friendster, MySpace, all the way up to Facebook and Twitter and so forth. So the definitions of this kind of software can include weaponry. And in fact, the definitions of weapons can be redefined. When you look at sticks and stones and muskets and 44s, those are yesteryear's weapons. The new weapons that the world deals with today relate to Stuxnet, relates to weapons that require presidential approval. These are software weapons. They're based on influence campaigning. They're based on the ability to produce natural-sounding language from natural-looking social networking profiles. So GPT-3 language models can be used in the wrong way, and we're well aware of that. We like to keep our community informed. This is why we're talking about this, and so that everyone can know what to protect against. Software masquerading as a human on social networks are used to generate text, including headlines and news stories, is something to be aware of today. So we don't sail the seas of politics, we sail the seas of the global capital marketplace and the worldwide Wild West. So our goal is to be on the right side of history. It's our primary goal. Right now, our eyes are on the Dow and bellwethers like the SPYs, BTC, ETH, Amazon, Google, Apple. We're going to see what they do, and we're going to keep our ears to the ground, listening for the message of the markets. We're always on the watch for that second shoe to drop. So one of our goals is to make sure that we can adapt and react to changing market conditions. We have a panoply of short-side solutions for when the time is right. This has been a pre-recorded call. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them online. Thanks for joining.